Welcome everyone to our webinar in commemoration of World Consumer Rights Day 2022, courtesy of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Consumer Affairs Division. I am your host, Eva Bullard Noel, and your moderator for today's proceedings. The theme for this year's webinar is Fair Digital Finance, and we have a panel of professionals in the fields of law and finance within the financial services sector who possess a wealth of knowledge and experience, and they would be speaking to us about protecting the digital consumer, making online financial services safe, fair, protected, and inclusive, and the consumer's rights and responsibilities in the financial marketplace. Before we proceed, we kindly ask that all questions or comments be placed in the Q&A tab or the chat. And those who are live on Facebook, you can also place your comments on the Consumer Affairs Division's webpage, and we would attempt to address all of these at the end of the presentations. Our first speaker for today is Mrs. Claudette Jordan-John from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Consumer Affairs Division, and she serves as the Acting Director, Consumer Guidance and Protection. Mrs. Jordan-John will be speaking to us for the next 5 minutes, giving an introduction and general overview of the work of the Consumer Affairs Division. I would now give way to Mrs. Jordan-John.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I am pleasantly, not surprised, I'm pleased that I saw someone in the comments just now said they got the information from the television broadcast this morning. So I am pleased that we reached someone. As Ms. Bullard has said, I just have a brief presentation. So consumer protection, right, has always been important to the governments of Trinidad and Tobago. So flowing from the international consumer protection trend, consumer protection started in Trinidad and Tobago around the year 1972. And at that time, a Consumer Guidance Council was formed. The council didn't do very much in terms of consumer protection at that time. They were mainly to serve the government by addressing consumer issues and providing advice to the government. However, the trend picked up, and in 1977, the Consumer Affairs Division was formed. So that sort of institutionalized consumer protection in Trinidad and Tobago. With the formation of the Consumer Affairs Division, then the advocates, the staff were more empowered to protect consumers by helping them to resolve complaints and enforcing the law, because we are guided and mandated by the Consumer Protection and Safety Act. So we were supposed to look for breaches, but our main thrust at that time was to try to help consumers. And flowing from that, not only help in the sense that we are supposed to protect the economic interests of consumers in Trinidad and Tobago. So to do that, and as the years pass, we try to put information to the public. Consumer education then formed a more integral part of what we do. So by protecting the consumer's interests and by providing them with information, we have a more empowered consumer. So Ms. Bullard, if you could share my screen, I will just go through the little that I have. So, okay, who is the Consumer Affairs Division? While Ms. Bullard is sharing, I will continue to speak. The division, the Consumer Affairs Division, is the consumer advocacy arm of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. In previous years, we would either be a ministry on our own at one point, or we would be a part or an adjunct of another ministry. So presently, we are under the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So I jumped ahead of myself and I did not welcome all to World Consumer Rights Day. All right, so March 15 every year, we celebrate World Consumer Rights Day along with 150 odd other countries around the world. Okay, Consumer Affairs Division, Consumer Advocacy Arm of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And we operate under the Consumer Protection and Safety Act, Chapter 8234, as I had previously said. We seek to safeguard the economic interests of consumers. We aim to do this by, offering consumer redress and protection, education and empowerment, and consumer research. So the hosting of this webinar is part of our Consumer Education Trust. So this slide is just, itemizing what I have just said. So World Consumer Rights Day. It is an annual event that signifies solidarity in the international consumer movement. Celebrated March 15th annually. And usually the countries that are members of CI and other members, we promote the theme that is set by Consumers International, who is the international body that is driving consumer protection. And this year, the theme is Fair Digital Finance.
Okay.
So to jump in a little on the theme for this year, it's just, as I said earlier, an overview because the esteemed panelists will go more into it and explain. So fair digital financial services are services which require digital technologies for their delivery to and use by consumers. As we see now, because of the pandemic, it is more evident. Digital technologies are reshaping all the areas of finance, payments, lending, insurance, and wealth management. The number of benefits, with technologies in every space, there are a number of benefits and a number of risks. So I'll just say a few of the benefits that are available to consumers. So these are some of the benefits, the obvious benefits. The speed of it, the convenience, personalization of services, security, once properly utilized, support greater access to financial products and services, and it encourages competition because now we see many segments of the financial landscape utilizing more financial technologies. So this is almost the end of my presentation, just to say how we can be reached on the last slide. We can be reached, you can contact us via Facebook by Consumer Affairs TT. And we also receive complaints at present because of the pandemic. We still are not seeing consumers face-to-face, but you can email any complaint you have at consumeraffairs@gov.tt or utilize our toll-free number at 800-4277. Any of these methods, once you reach out to us, we will get back to you and try to assist in any way we can. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your undivided attention, and I ask you to please focus more on the experts at hand. Enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Jordan-John, for enlightening us on the history and the work of the Consumer Affairs Division. Mrs. Jordan-John again serves as the Acting Director, Consumer Guidance and Protection. We would like to remind all invitees to place your comments or questions in the Q&A chat. Those who are live on Facebook can place it in the Facebook chat as well, and we will attempt to answer all of these at the end of the presentations. Those who have just joined us, thank you for joining us. Next, we will hear from Mr. Carlos Newton, who serves as the Manager, Financial Systems Services Delivery at the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center. Mr. Newton, we welcome you and thank you for taking the time to speak with us. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to the moderator. Good morning to the panelists. Good morning to the wider public. Today we are on World Consumer Affairs Day 2022 as we look at fair digital finance. My presentation will be more so on looking at Trinidad and what the TTIFC has to do in building a framework for accelerating digital finance within Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Carlos Newton, and I'm the Manager of Financial Systems Service Delivery at the TTIFC, and it's part of my role in order to do so. So today we'll be going through a very short presentation with the agenda of an introduction to TTIFC, who are we? And then we'll go into the different teams that TTIFC has to undertake with its new updated mandate. And then we'll look at the way forward. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. So our vision at TTIFC is to drive the digital finance service adoption across all sectors of Trinidad and Tobago. We are trying to become the regional and premier location for fintech and fintech-enabled services. With that, our mission is to have that continuous drive, that continuous push to ensure that the financial service sector, through integrations and different applications and by stakeholder integrations, we can actually achieve this and better provide service to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as ease of doing business for international companies while actually achieving financial inclusion, which we'll touch on a little later on. So what does TTIFC? Who is TTIFC? We are a resourceful ally to all our stakeholders across Trinidad and Tobago, from government stakeholders to private sector stakeholders. We are a resourceful ally. We provide a broad perspective of what is happening in the local and global market. We support the growth and integration of fintech. We promote the adoption and development of the cashless society, which the government is trying to achieve by 2023. Right? We also focus on encouraging governmental and private sector institutions to offer more cashless payment options while collaborating with the domestic international stakeholders, both within the private and public sector, to gather essential information and experience, which will aid us on our journey as we take that journey. So what have we done so far? As a resourceful ally, we have collaborated with international as well as domestic and local stakeholders. We collaborated with the Development Bank of Latin America, CAF. We also collaborated with different entities that came into Trinidad doing the BPO services. We collaborated with local stakeholders. We launched FINTECH TT back in February of 2020, as well as we worked assiduously on the e-money policy order, as well as develop that cabinet note, which went to cabinet to actually have that order passed into law, right? So these are just some of the things that TTIFC has embarked on and things that we continuously do to drive the cashless society and actually drive consumer protection, which we will learn later on. Now, as I said, our mandate was switched back in April of 2021. That mandate just switched and changed now to make us more relevant, to really drive that cashless society and that cashless vision that the government are trying to do had, right? While increasing fintech-enabled financial services and developing actually a fintech-enabled hub by 2023. Two of our roles comprise of, to have influence with stakeholders such as regulators and other public and private sector agencies as we're doing today, to really drive that notion across on what the government is trying to do. We also have to specifically address the transformative and development challenges that the financial sector is facing, and how can we mitigate and fix those as it relates to the digitalization of the financial transactions within government. Now, to do so, we had to come up with different ways. And we have, with that new change mandate, right, we then came up with some strategic teams. Today, I'll just be looking at 3 of those teams that we have, which will impact consumer rights, consumer affairs, and how persons interact with government and with not just government, but doing payments in general, right? So to embark on our journey, we identified the following strategic themes, which played particular focus on the key thematic areas of the company. Now, the first one is promoting and advancing financial inclusion. Later on, we will touch on what is financial inclusion and how we will go about promoting and advancing financial inclusion within Trinidad and what role it plays for us all. Then we will look at how we are working with different stakeholders to really accelerate the digitalization of payments across government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And finally, we look at our FinTech Hub, how and what the FinTech Hub will entail and what impacts it will have on society as a whole. So let's look at the first team. Team 1, financial inclusion. Now, one of the main keys to achieving this mandate pillar in particular and improving financial inclusion in Trinidad and Tobago lies firstly in understanding the current levels of financial inclusion. Now, how do you do that? You'll have to do research, you'll have to conduct surveys, which TTIFC'S is actually within the process of onboarding a consultant to really give us that knowledge. What are the current levels of financial inclusion? We know what the bank account rate is in Trinidad and Tobago, which stands at 81%, but we also know that only 67% of those persons actually use those accounts. So we have to understand, okay, what are the hindrances for those persons not using the account, and how could we aid them and help them in edifying them on the benefits of doing so? Another facet is to determine why individuals are unbanked. Why persons do not want to take part within the financial service sector? What are those hindrances? What are those factors that they are using to prevent them from actually taking part in that? Then we'll be looking at the broad spectrum, the multi-dimensional picture of where we stand as a country, how far we have come as it relates to financial inclusion and consumer rights, and how far we need to go, right? We need to look at this. It is also key in executing a national strategy. So everything comes back to the role it plays nationally within Trinidad and Tobago. In doing so, we're looking at it through 3 broad spectrums, which is access, usage, and quality. That is access to financial services, the use of it, why persons may not want to use it, but also promote why persons should use it, and then the quality of service. Is this service geared towards a particular segment? Because we're looking at all segments and identify as to why these persons do not have either access, why they don't use, and if the quality of the financial service that is provided to them is adequate and they understand how to use it. Now, so that pillar, this financial inclusion is a broad spectrum, and we're looking at it as the vulnerable groups, the groups within society who may not have ever known the benefits of actually taking part in the financial system, and then how we can help them and edify them on how taking part and what are the benefits to them of actually taking part in the financial system is going to benefit them and their family, their children and grandchildren and future generations. So we're looking at that, gathering the information. And within the second quarter of this year, we should be embarking on that journey to really start that whole financial inclusion journey and identifying these 3 key areas within Trinidad and Tobago. That's the first team. The second team is accelerating the digitalization of payments across government. Now, this is near and dear because each one of our pillars, each of our mandate pillars, all lie within to one another. You cannot accelerate digital payments if you don't know persons are going to use it. So that's why we embarked on financial inclusion. We need to understand, okay, as we accelerate and digitize payments across government, that every single citizen is able to take part in these services that we're implementing across government, right? Now, and as we say, accelerating this digital payment, this just means that shifting government from a more paper-based, which is from payrolls, pensions, you still have pensions paid out in checks, fines and fees, you still get a ticket, these different things, to any form of electronic payment. What the TTIFC has done in recent times is develop a payment service provider retail payment network instructions for persons to use those PSPs, that network to make payments into government. Later on, it will be the flip side, where you can try, we'll be developing and working with government to actually have payments made out using these same networks, right? So this is to happen across all government agencies. TTIFC, this shift can improve the way government makes and receives payments, contribute to better governance and efficiency, supporting economic activity, enhance public welfare, and promote greater financial inclusion for the unbanked and underbanked citizens of Tobago. So this is what it can provide. Now, in doing so, it also provides a different layer as well, which we'll look at: consumer and data protection. Now, in doing all of these things, you also have to understand how is the consumer is going to be protected. Within Trinidad and Tobago right now, as it stands, we have a very robust Consumer and Data Protection Act in place to really help and protect the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, right? These current legislations are in place to inform and reduce the risk of persons doing transactions associated with digital and electronic payments. So we see to the left, the Electronic Transaction Act. Number 8, Section 8, number 55 states that persons must receive sufficient and appropriate information prior to conducting an online transaction in order to make an informed decision about the proposed purchase. So you will see that nearly all government agencies have those terms and conditions available for you to read, understand, and know that your transaction is protected, right? And it goes further under the Data Protection Act of 2011. They say, here's what. This act seeks to ensure that individuals' right to privacy and the right to maintain sensitive personal information as private and personal. So this act protects you with your information when you make payment online, when you make payments electronically to government agencies and to any establishment within Trinidad and Tobago, be it online or in person. The Act states that it's the legal requirements of any person or organization on how individuals' personal data ought to be handled and processed and stored. So in doing so, you can see that here's what your information is protected. You are protected for doing this transaction. As well, later on, as you see the trend going forward, in 2015, they had the Cybersecurity Act. Now, this act then detailed the role of the nation's cybersecurity ally, TTIFC'S, right? TTIFC'S is the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, and they are responsible for providing alerts and warning for the latest cyber threats and vulnerabilities within Trinidad and Tobago, which can affect the local community, which is protecting the citizens, protecting you and me, and guiding us in the right way on the different things that you can do to protect yourselves as well. So what they've done, and what these 3 acts done and the cybersecurity team has done, is provide tips that citizens can look into, that citizens can take into consideration while performing these types of digital payments. Now, digital payments are used by consumers to enjoy many benefits. These include faster transaction speed, convenience, ease of accessibility, able for you to manage your money, cost reduction. You don't have to travel to go to a location to make a payment. You can do it at home, saving that transportation cost. the ability to track and monitor your transactions, and also it led the additional layer of security, which is equally important to the consumer. So the first step is set up alerts. Be notified as a consumer if anything is going on in your account. The other thing is protect your personal information. Don't share your password, your PIN with anyone. The third one is to create unique passwords and PINs. The fourth is to ensure that all loss or theft is immediately reported to any financial institution or financial service provider of any of such acts, lost or stolen. So there are things out there that consumers can educate themselves about. The information is there for you, and these departments are here. TTIFC is working alongside these departments to ensure that the information is passed on. Finally, the FinTech Hub. In creating and developing the FinTech Hub within Trinidad and Tobago, this will help drive the financial technology ecosystem and also increase the diversity and advance the financial sector of Trinidad and Tobago. The little diagram here shows you, here's what? These are different aspects of FinTech, of financial technology: online banking, e-banking security, payment gateway, investment, robo-advisor. All these are part of using digital transactions, right? So let's look at the TTIFC key initiatives to making Trinidad and Tobago a FinTech hub. One, we'll be embarking on a readiness assessment to help understand Trinidad and Tobago as regards to manpower, infrastructure, legislative, and the environment. The second thing is developing that innovation hub for local FinTech companies to attract FinTechs throughout that whole acceleration incubation hub. And then actually providing and guiding a roadmap that will guide the sequencing timeline and processes for advancing the development of the hub, all in benefit of the Trinidad and Tobago and the consumers. So what is the way forward? How do we move forward with all of this information? How does TTIFC guide and help the consumers, keep them protected? Because we do so when we create all instructions for government for different EFT payment methods. We ensure that consumer protection of act is part and parcel of those instructions. So the way forward. The TTIFC way forward, as we stand to really boost and benefit and receive the benefits by encouraging individuals with accounts to utilize financial services. As a resourceful ally, we will provide support for the advancement of the use of financial technology. We will help aid the removal of barriers that impede persons from actually accessing the financial systems by actually doing this financial inclusion survey, by broadening the financial space, increasing innovation in digital payment options that can actually increase financial connectivity, which will reduce costs for the consumers and reduce costs for the government as a whole. As we continue to echo the call for the development of the local FinTech ecosystem, TTIFC will develop different payment systems in good physical infrastructure with the appropriate regulations, the different safeguards for consumer protection, and the enhanced financial inclusions to persons who previously were not able to actually access these services. We'll do all of this in one step at a time. So with that, I will say thank you for the time, and I now hand back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Newton, for that enlightening and engaging presentation on digitalizing the payment systems for the government departments and agencies. It was very, very informative, and I know we have some questions already for you, so stay with us and as we continue. Our next speaker is Mr. Antonio Ventor, who serves as the chairman, Interbank Security Committee at Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. So we ask for your undivided attention again, and please engage us for the next 15 minutes as Mr. Ventor speaks to us.
Thank you very much. Good day, folks. I trust that I promise you that my presentation will be very, very, very brief. Okay, my name is Antonio Vento. I'm the chair for the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago Interbank Anti-Fraud and Security Committee. This committee meets on a bi-monthly basis where we discuss issues as relates to fraud and fraud-related activity for each financial institution represented at the Bankers Association. Now, protecting the digital consumer by making online financial services safe, fair, and protected. Right? Now, the consumer's rights and responsibilities in the financial marketplace, I'll be representing this from a fraud-related perspective. We all know from the moment you talk digital banking or online banking, one of the first concerns of consumers or the customers is, are my transactions safe? Is my account safe? And that sort of concern would arise, and I'm here to alleviate any issues you may have in that regard. Now, because it's an electronic transaction, a digital transaction, all financial institutions would have what you call an electronic banking agreement that speaks to any unauthorized transactions between their customers and their online platform. It may not be called an electronic banking agreement, but it's an agreement between customers and the bank as it relates to those financial activities online. Now, one of the ways to protect your privacy and security, right now, all of the banks are committed to helping the clients keep their online and mobile banking experience secure and private. The banks use state-of-the-art technology and follow numerous security procedures to help protect the client's accounts from any unauthorized transactions. Therefore, it is imperative for clients to maximize the security of their online mobile activities and protect themselves against identity theft and other online or mobile fraud by learning more about online banking security tools. Now, for example, clients need to know the end-to-end process of any online banking activity. You need to know what the steps are in sequence. So just in case there's anything that alters that sequence in terms of what the process is supposed to be, you could then abort that transaction because more than likely that's a red flag. Okay. Now, when it comes to online banking, the ultimate tool is what you call your sign-in protection or your two-factor authentication. Now, two-factor authentication adds an extra barrier between your accounts and any unauthorized users. The feature works from any location, whether you're signing in from a public computer, whether you're home, any devices, smartphones, tablets, whatever devices you have, the two-factor authentication process, that app could be downloaded and worked on that device accordingly. Once you have enrolled for the two-factor authentication option, you will be equipped with the most advanced security features available to date. What are the two-factor authentication elements? First, to begin, you're looking at your password, right? You develop your own password. Now, there are apps out there that could decipher a password. It may take a while, a day or two, maybe a week, but it will eventually get there. So what we like to recommend is that people use phrases instead of passwords. You know, for example, I love Lara, my favorite meal. All these little phrases with you use numbers in there, you use signs, numeric inclusions, spaces, and that way you create a difficulty, a greater difficulty for persons who intend to more or less discover and find out what your passwords are. The phrases seem to be a little more effective in protecting your privacy. The other part of the two-factor is the application itself produces a code to you, and that code changes every few seconds. So from the beginning of your transaction to the end of your transaction, that code will keep changing. That 4-digit code keeps changing all along. And that way you're guaranteed by the time you're prepared to end that transaction, your transaction would be safe. All right, so the two-factor authentication speaks to your passwords and the producing of a 4-digit code, which comes from the application. You have the other protection when it comes to personal verification questions, commonly called PVQs. Online and mobile banking customers are asked to provide a set of personal verification questions, right? Now, personal verification questions are unique to each customer and are not accessible to anyone else. Caution must be exercised when setting up personal verification questions. You must always keep your questions private and avoid using questions that are easily guessed, right? So you'll have a myriad of questions and you need to provide the correct answers. There are circumstances when you may have to call your institution because you forgot your password, and you may have to call the 24/7 online 24/7 advice center, contact center, and they would ask you your the PVQs that's identified to make sure there's you, the account holder, at the other end of the call. Now, in terms of communicating with your banks, any concerns that you may have, if you wish to do so by emails, you could also do that through your online banking platform, your application. What you find is that communication to the banks from that platform, those emails are encrypted, making it even safer in terms of whatever information you're corresponding to your financial institution. So it is advised that you use encrypted emails to get that message across as well. It is not advised for you to put your personal or financial information into emails that you send through your Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo accounts, as the case may be. Always use what you call encrypted emails. Right now, at the end of the day, clients also have a particular responsibility as well. You need to protect your passwords. You need to protect, as Carlos indicated before, you need to protect your PIN, right? You need to protect your user ID, okay? You mustn't disclose any type of private information at all whatsoever. Please note that there's no bank that will ever call you or ask you for your PIN, your passwords, your token values, or personal verification questions. No bank will do that. Once that is happening, you know for a fact that that call didn't come from the bank. As a matter of fact, in the fraud rules, it's termed vishing due to the voice aspect of it. You must keep your login information secure and strictly confidential at all times. Immediately notify the bank or change your password if you have any reason to believe that your login information may have been compromised, right? Promptly report incidents if you are a victim of unauthorized account access by calling the bank's support units. More than likely that would be through the contact center or the advice center, because each bank would have a 24-hour service where you could call the bank and make these reports right away, right? Now, as I said, the consumer themselves have a responsibility, and these are the points that I'm highlighting to you, right? Promptly report any incidents. If you believe you are a victim of account access, call the bank, as I said, immediately and make that report to the bank, and act on the report and block your account accordingly. Do not leave your computer or devices unattended while using electronic services. Always use the sign off button once you have completed your banking. For additional security, close your browser window or app before leaving your computer. Sign out and close your internet browser or app at the end of each electronic banking session. Very important. Again, keep your password and personal verification questions confidential, and keep your tokens and secure cards secure. And by that, when I say tokens, I mean that is the second application of the second element, sorry, of your two-factor authentication, right? Now, and most important, once you have any concerns about any transaction on your account that you know nothing about, you have the right to escalate those concerns through the bank's channels. You have a right to report those instances, and the bank has an obligation to investigate and look at your concerns, okay? With that, I end my very short presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ventor, for that enlightening presentation on the work of the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago and for the rights and responsibilities from the point of view of fraud for financial consumers. Now we are moving on to our final speaker for today, and her name is Ms. Annalisa Bala Patel, who serves as the legal counsel in the Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman. And now we invite your undivided attention again for the next 20 minutes as Ms. Patel speaks with us.
Good morning all to the Consumer Affairs Division, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, my fellow panelists and the listening public. I have a very done. So just all banks, non-banks, and insurance companies fall under the remit of the Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman. Our office was set up to receive complaints from individuals and small businesses concerning services that you've received from the banks and the insurance companies, and to facilitate the resolution of these complaints. We consider small businesses to be those businesses in value of up to $1.5 million, not taking account of your land and your building. Our duties include advising the public on our complaints handling procedures, but we do not provide financial advice or insurance advice. We facilitate resolution of complaints by agreement between parties, and where we cannot come to agreement, by making recommendations or awards. So we cannot tell you who to bank with or who to take out your motor insurance with, but if you have a complaint that is unresolved with your financial institution, we can definitely have a look at it. So some things that we are not a court of law, we are not a public watchdog, we are not a consumer advocacy body. In relation to supervision and regulation of financial institutions, that responsibility rests with the Financial Institutions Supervision Department of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. In looking at complaints, we look at overall fairness and equity, general business principles, industry standards, and codes of conduct, and we have due regard to existing laws and regulations. Our services are free of charge to the public. We do not have legislative backing like the Consumer Affairs Division, but what we do have are terms of reference which guides our mandates. It establishes the procedures that we need to follow in handling customer complaints. As Mr. Ventor indicated, if you see something that is wrong, if you observe something that is not adding up, your first port of call is your financial institution. Contact your branch, contact your agency, and raise your complaint. You as the consumer, you have the responsibility to try to get some resolution for your complaint with the institution. The institution in turn, they would escalate. When matters can't be resolved at the institution level, or when some time passes and the customer remains frustrated or the matter is unresolved, they could turn to our office. All complaints must be in writing on a prescribed form. You as the consumer must outline the facts giving rise to the complaint, the nature and the extent of the loss that you suffered, and what is the relief that you are seeking from the bank or from the insurance company. On the banking side of things, there are some areas that we can definitely consider under our terms of reference. These include deposit and loan accounts, card services, investment services, trust account, and mutual funds. We cannot, however, consider general interest rates, credit decisions, or the pricing of products or services. On the insurance side of things, we can definitely look at issues in relation to your life insurance policies, health insurance, individual annuity, property insurance, first-party motor insurance, third-party property damage arising out of that accident where there is a limit of $100,000. Just as with banking, there are certain areas in insurance that our office does not have the authority to take a complaint on. These include premium rates, group pensions, injury, or where third-party damage exceeds $100,000. There are other areas that our office will usually not consider. If a matter is barred by law, if you had a complaint with us before and you don't have any new evidence in relation to your complaint, or if your complaint is actually before a court of law, before an arbitrator, before some other tribunal, unfortunately, you will not be able to get any redress from us. In all instances, when we assess complaints, if our office determines it is better for you to take your matter before a court of law and have your issues ventilated there, we recommend that also. As previously mentioned, we handle resolution of complaints in 3 ways, agreement being the most popular. And this is where we endeavor to promote a settlement between the individual and the bank or the insurance company. If agreement does not work, as previously mentioned, we do have the authority to make a recommendation or an award as it relates to a complaint. Just a brief look at our statistics. In 2020, we received 25 banking complaints and we closed 31 banking complaints in that time. Our investigations show that of those 31 closed banking complaints in 2020, there were 21 instances of improper financial institution actions, 10 instances of proper financial institution actions. So you might be asking yourself, what does improper financial actions constitute? Sometimes there may be unauthorized transactions on an account and the bank did not regularize that account, meaning the account was not credited with the sum. That will fall under improper. In other instances, as mentioned by my 2 previous panelists, you shared your PIN with someone, maybe someone you trusted, your spouse or a child, and there were unauthorized transactions on your account. The bank will not reimburse you in that case. That will be recorded as an instance of a proper financial institution actions. In 2021, you will see there was an upward trend. We received 56 banking complaints and we closed 41. Of this number, there were 28 instances of improper financial institutions actions and 13 instances of proper actions. On the insurance side of things, in 2020, we received 205 insurance complaints, closing 237. We record insurance complaints under broad categories, including inadequate settlement, which was the majority of complaints received for that period. This is where an insurance company would have made an offer to an individual and the individual is not satisfied with that monetary sum. Denial of claim, undue delay, and other. Again, in 2021, there was an increase in the amount of insurance complaints that we received, being 240 and closing 261. Our office also records inquiries. These are matters that do not meet the threshold of being a complaint, and they are inquiries against the banks, non-banks, insurance companies, and other agencies, including credit unions, unit trusts, government ministries and agencies, and of course, our office have no remit over those latter bodies. So I would just like to briefly touch on a couple of real cases and inquiries that our office dealt with in about the last 12 to 15 months. So in one case, there was a series of unauthorized online transactions, and the bank was saying the customer needs to verify the credentials to sign in to that online platform in order to initiate these transactions. The customer countered. She indicated that someone else from another device logged in and they were the ones doing the unauthorized transactions. The bank did its investigation, indicating that if in fact another device was used, a verification code would have been sent to that customer in order for her to register a new device. In this case, no such verification code was sent. So just to reiterate what Mr. Ventor said, your verification codes, your usernames, your passwords, your personal devices, keep your eyes, keep your ears, keep your everything on them. In another case, a customer contacted us because he was receiving less and less paper statements. He held more than one bank account with the particular institution. The bank advised, and this is a direct quote, in the next year, there would be no paper statements, as all banks would go the way of digital statements only. If the customer is willing, he can visit a branch and we would go through internet banking with him. Did I mention the customer is 85 years old? All of his adult children are living abroad. He is not computer literate. He is not tech savvy. His eyesight is failing him. In another case, someone did an interbank transfer to another bank. He thought it went through successfully. The ACH platform, which was used to complete his transaction, detected an erroneous failed transaction. So his account was recredited. The other bank, who in fact indicated that the transfer was successful, so a second credit took place. This threw his bank account into overdraft. This was a gentleman who is living paycheck to paycheck, has his eyes on all of his dollars and cents. So when that bank had to pull that amount a second time, that overdraft attracted a fee to his account. He came to our office for assistance. The last case that I would like to share is in relation to cryptocurrency. A customer stated that he used his credit card in the past to purchase cryptocurrency online, and he cited his credit card agreement saying it could be used for purchasing of goods, services, and other purposes anywhere. The bank stated that cryptocurrency companies often code themselves with incorrect merchant information, and in the past, some transactions would have fell through the cracks, been approved, and processed. The bank advised that a block was placed on those purchases to protect the bank, to protect customers in times where especially online fraud is rampant. Cryptocurrency is not legislated or regulated. In this case, when the bank's findings were communicated to the customer, he indicated that he is okay taking chances. So in the recent past, we have made some general observations from where we sit at the Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman. We have observed an increase in online banking, all of the mobile apps, cashless, cash, instant transfer of funds to others within your bank, third-party transfer windows shortening, small businesses operating and flourishing in the pandemic, where you place your order online even when physical stores were closed and you got delivery of your items to your door. But most financial institutions, especially banks, require you to make an appointment online to open an account. You must have data. You must be tech savvy. You must know how to navigate these websites in order to make an appointment to get a bank account in the first place. What about persons who do have online banking? So they do not go into the physical banks to conduct their transactions. And they may develop mental illness, unsound mind, but loved ones have their login information. What about those that are illiterate, financially illiterate, and vulnerable? How do we really protect them? Another arm of my department, the National Financial Literacy Program, was established in 2007 and is aimed at producing better informed, knowledgeable, and financially aware individuals who are equipped with skills and knowledge required to make sensible financial decisions. The National Financial Literacy Survey was conducted in 2007. We had another one in 2013, and currently we have an ongoing survey. In 2013, various dimensions of financial literacy was surveyed, including making ends meet, knowledge of financial products and services, and planning ahead. The results were not too good. 44% of respondents exhibited low financial capability. 67% of micro entrepreneurs had no financial statements. And a whopping 21%, so 1 out of 5 persons, no bank accounts. Currently, as I mentioned, the NFLP is continuing a survey. So look out, check your email. You might be getting a call from them where you will have the opportunity to answer. And this survey will hopefully give us up-to-date information in relation to the bank versus the unbanked. They are also looking at online banking, mobile app banking, the use of digital wallets, your experience with skimming and phishing. So hopefully this current survey would provide some benchmarks in the area of digital finance. I encourage you to visit the National Financial Literacy Program's website, www.nflp.org.tt. They have published, among many other useful publications, consumer protection tips for electronic transactions. So in a nutshell, what the other panelists were speaking about, ways that you can protect yourself, it's contained in that particular publication. Also, in May 2018, a National Financial Education Committee was set up with the overall aim of having a national financial literacy strategy for Trinidad and Tobago. The Financial Services Ombudsman recognized that in various organizations throughout Trinidad and Tobago, we financial literacy, we may overlap in other areas. And this committee, comprising a number of stakeholders, including BAT, really are coming together to create this national financial literacy strategy where all segments of society would be included. So just some closing remarks. The Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman provides a mediation process to aggrieved customers. We encourage banks, non-banks, and the insurance companies to be diligent in their dealings with their customers. We protect consumers' contractual rights, and we promote greater transparency, greater consumer confidence, and it lends credibility to our overall financial services in the banking and insurance industries. So in closing, ways to contact us, and unlike the Consumer Affairs Division, we actually continue to receive customers face-to-face at our offices located at the first floor Central Bank building. We have a Facebook and Instagram feed, a hotline at 800-4FSO, which is 800-4376, and our website, www.ofso.org.tt. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Vala Patel, for allowing us to have a clearer understanding of the work of the Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman and how they offer protection to consumers. It is now time to engage you, the attentive audience, and we have a lot of questions for our panelists, so please stay with us. And we have questions from the chat, so we'll answer as many as we can in the time that we have remaining. So our first question is for the International Financial Center, Mr. Carlos Newton, and I would read it out for you. How are companies like WePay or WIPay being integrated in the drive for a cashless society since they have left Trinidad and are up the islands?
Good morning and thanks for the question. WePay, as any other fintech company, is registered within Trinidad and Tobago. They still play an integral part within the ecosystem for cashless society. They're also a member of FINTECH TT, which was formed by TTIFC'S back in 2020. So in whatever way WePay as a company can see where they can add value to the society, they are free to do so in any such way, right? They are not barred from doing so. They are registered as an e-money service provider. So they can take part within the financial sector as it relates to providing cashless options to consumers.
Okay, we have a lot of questions almost relating around the same issue. So I'm just going to read one of them and I'm just going to read out the other one as well. So somebody's saying here, it is so difficult to open a bank account. What procedure will be put in place for these pensioners and the vulnerable, marginalized, illiterate persons in society who have only one form of ID and a birth certificate?
Eva, can I take that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so as mentioned, I represent the Office of the Financial Institution, Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman, sorry, but I can give some information from the central bank. They actually issued a circular letter to all commercial banks, and this was dated September 13th, 2021. A copy of the circular is actually located on the central bank's website, that is www.central-bank.org.tt. And what this particular circular letter seeks to do is to encourage the commercial banks to implement simplified due diligence measures for basic banking accounts to vulnerable people in society, including the low income and the undocumented persons. And the guideline states, in no instance should such an account be opened for anyone with above $84,000. So we're looking at persons $7,000 a month and under. The guideline looks at those instances where persons have one form of valid ID and have issues with having that job letter and the address, the utility bill, that kind of thing. That particular circular speaks to that. So the central bank did its part, sent it out to the commercial banks the commercial banks were consulted with and they have given their support. So hopefully we will see some changes in that area.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vala Patel, for answering that question for us. I hope that the person that asked the question has the answer. I know TTARP had a question as well along those same lines, and I hope that it was sufficiently answered. This is for Mr. Newton. I may have missed it, but what is the current percentage of unbanked persons in Trinidad and Tobago?
Thank you again. So right now within Trinidad and Tobago, we have an 81% bank account ownership within Trinidad and Tobago, so that's 19%. However, we have a 67% usage. So we have a part of that 81% that is not using the bank accounts. It's like 14%, I believe.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Newton. I hope the person who asked the question, it was answered sufficiently for you. Our next question is about cryptocurrency, and I'm not sure whose realm this is in. So what do you think about the introduction of cryptocurrency into the financial services system in Trinidad and Tobago?
All right, so I'll take a shot of it. All right, so the use of cryptocurrency right now is not legislated by the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. However, central bank is not barring persons from actually, they pass a circular as well, barring persons from purchasing cryptocurrency or accessing US cash through the banks to actually purchase cryptocurrency, right? However, the use of the technology, the blockchain technology, would be beneficial to any financial sector as it provides additional level of security.
Okay. This is for Ms. Vala Patel. I have been involved in a vehicular accident where the insurance company will not consider the legal costs in an attempt to recoup these expenses. What other avenue or avenues do I have in order to recoup these expenses from the third party?
Illegal costs. Repeat, Eva, please.
Okay, I'll say it again. I have been involved in a vehicular accident where the insurance company will not consider the legal costs in an attempt to recoup these expenses. I think she's saying wanting to go legal or suing the person, the third party.
Okay, as mentioned in my presentation, if you opt to retain legal representation for your matter, of course you have to pay your attorney. Our office, we can't get involved. We are an alternative to the court system using mediation to bring settlement to matters. So if you're going to court, you have your attorney, you, the individual, will have to bear the cost of that. If you opt not to go the legal route and you have an outstanding complaint with your insurance company, definitely get in contact with our office.
Okay, and the next question is for Annalisa again. Can you provide some statistics on what non-banking complaints would have been received? So I guess, I'm not sure if it is that you have it to hand or if it's something.
I do actually have it at hand. Those banking figures that I shared covered both the commercial banks and the non-banks. So the commercial banks like RBC, RBL, Scotia, etc. The non-banks like Island Finance and that kind of thing. But what I could say is that non-banks only account for a very small portion of reported complaints compared to the commercial banks.
Okay. Annalisa, while I still have you, does the FSO deal with credit unions that commit fraudulent acts? Example, monies disappear from your deposit account and you did not do anything.
All right, credit unions have their particular piece of legislation. It is the Cooperative Societies Act. They actually have a commissioner for cooperative development, and complaints can be channeled there. The commissioner for cooperatives is located in Anva Plaza Tunapuna Eastern Main Road. I don't have the contact telephone number in front of me, but if you Google it, all credit union issues could be channeled to that particular organization and individual.
Okay, this is for Mr. Vento. I am a victim of card skimming. What is the responsibility of the bank as it pertains to skimming and compensation?
Okay, so once you have been confirmed as being skimmed, because it is a common complaint once persons miss funds from their account to indicate that they were skimmed, right? Only to realize that the person was not skimmed, because when skimming occurs, skimmers don't skim one card, right? They skim scores, hundreds of cards. So if the first thing the investigation would look to see where this person's card was used, and if this is the only person making a claim of skimming, right? Because normally when there's skimming occurring, you have scores of people complaining about skimming. Persons process don't skim one card. But nonetheless, if the person's card has been skimmed, their duty is to report it to their financial institution. There's a particular form they would have to complete, which is a claim form. That form will go through the process of being reported straight to the card center, and it will go to the investigation unit, and they would look at that entire issue and treat it accordingly. Now, at the end of the day, once you could confirm that the person was skimmed, they will be reimbursed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vento. We have requests asking about the recording. Yes, the recording would be available on our Ministry of Trade's website. So I would give that information at the end of the presentation. We have one for Mr. Vento again, and this is from the Trinidad Express, Ms. Andrea Perez Sobers. And she's asking, what was the percentage of online fraud that has been reported between 2020 to 2022? So it's a three-part question. What action was taken, and did the persons get redress? I'm not sure if Mr. Vento has it to hand, so he can always email if it is he doesn't. Mr. Vento?
Okay, so it depends on what you determine as online fraud, right? It depends. Now, at the end of the day, the percentage as it relates to that would be small. I do not have those figures close to me. I will try and source those figures and get back to you guys. I don't have those figures close to me, but nonetheless, it depends on what you determine online fraud, because at the end of the day, what we see, right, are transactions happening on persons' accounts who would have disclosed their credentials to persons, unknowingly and knowingly, right? What you would find is that persons who are victims of that type of fraud, the perpetrators tend to be persons known to them, close to them, persons who have access to their credentials or know the information, right? Nonetheless, once you have a claim of online fraud, obviously that would get to the particular department in the bank that would investigate those things. Each financial institution has a unit that would investigate those things, and each case to be treated on its own merit. Once you determine that there was a financial transaction in terms of online banking, and that transaction was not authorized by the customer, nonetheless, but the customer revealed their credentials to someone else, the bank would have to consider whether reimbursement is part of the process or not. And in terms of, I know people want to think that persons could hack into your account, right? That has not happened. There is no evidence of anybody hacking into anybody's account, savings account, checking account, it doesn't matter, right? There's no evidence of anyone hacking into persons' account. What you find is that persons are revealed or released or disclose their credentials, sometimes because the person would have tripped them, or persons who are close to them having this information would then do unauthorized transactions. Okay.
While you're here, Mr. Vento, somebody was asking about reporting fraud and regaining their credits. How is that? What do they do to the banks, the individual banks? How do they go about?
Could you repeat that question? You broke up a bit.
Where do we go to report a fraud and regain credits due to fraud?
Okay. Where do you go to report fraud? As Annalisa would have indicated, the first stop is your financial institution. Each bank now has a 24/7 service in terms of a contact center. You could pick up your phone at any time and make a phone call and report any issue of fraud or what you deem to be fraud you would have experienced, right? Now, depending on the type of fraud, there's a customer complaint, there's a customer complaint form. You go into a particular branch, your branch would then complete this form and send it off to the relevant unit that would deal with that particular aspect of the service or the facility, right? So your first stop is reporting it to your branch or your relationship manager, depending on your status. If it's a business account, as the case may be, if you're a business banking customer or commercial banking customer, you may have a relationship manager, someone assigned to you, you go to that person right away, right? If not, you go straight to your branch and speak to the frontline person who could then assist you. And in terms of any redress, well, that'll be considered in dealing with the facts related to that particular transaction.
Okay. I'm seeing a question here. I'm not sure who it is for, but what can be put in place for startups, small business owners with little or less cash when opening a savings account or business account? Anyone? Nobody? Okay. We'll see how we can assist you. And we'll just move on to the other questions. I have one from Mrs. Jordan John. Why do investigations take so long? It makes you lose confidence. Maybe you should share the info on issues dealt with us, resolved.
Good morning once again.
Dealt with us versus resolved. I'm sorry, let me read that again, Mrs. Jordan John again. Why do these investigations take so long? It makes you lose confidence. Maybe you should share the info on issues dealt with versus resolved. So I'll hand over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I will attempt to answer the question. I hope it is satisfactory. At the Consumer Affairs Division, we have a mandate to try to resolve a complaint within 3 months. If we can't get it resolved, then we will advise you to seek private legal action or refer you to somewhere else, perhaps like the Legal Aid and Advisory Authority, as the case may be. Sometimes if we are making some kind of headway with a supplier, it will go on for more than 3 months. If we are trying to negotiate and the person is showing, they're showing some kind of effort at resolving the complaint, but they have a little problem, so we try to work along with them. So it is a process, and each complaint is treated with its own merits, because some complaints are more difficult than others, some are simpler. So in terms of the complaints we receive a myriad amount of myriad types of complaints on white goods like refrigerators, stoves, shoes, phone, motor vehicles, paint jobs, you name it, we receive it. So each complaint is different. So just for a little stats, for the year so far, for the months of January and February, the division received 144 complaints. We resolved 111 complaints, so that is a rough percentage of 77%. Moreover, the monetary value of the resolutions was $334,731. So it may appear as though we're not doing anything for some people, for those who didn't get a satisfactory resolution. But the division is working full steam ahead with all the challenges of the pandemic. And apart from resolving complaints and investigating complaints, we provide information to the consumers. So by telephone, 375 inquiries we received. We had 132 via Facebook, people still walking, although we're not seeing people still walking. So we had 2 walk-ins. We had via email. So we try our best to try to resolve complaints as best as we can with the resources that we have. And we try to provide information to empower consumers. So perhaps the person who asks the question, if they want to send more details or contact us, we will have a look at the complaint to see what has taken place and why the complaint isn't resolved in the timely manner that they are looking for.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jordan-John. One question for Annalisa again. Does the NFLP offer info sessions for communities?
Hi, yes, they do. To SEA students, to the elderly, to the, they have had a number of programs with the Civilian Conservation Corps, with the Geriatric Adolescent program, GAP, with YTEP, yes. So just visit the NFLP's website, www.nflp.org.tt, and a request can be made there. Or alternatively, they can get in contact with the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, 621 CBTT, and the receptionist should be able to put through the call to that department. So yes, sessions are ongoing. We have facilitators who do those sessions on our behalf. All sessions are free.
Very good. I hope that answers your question and the information was well received. We have come to the end of our webinar for today on fair digital finance. And I hope that our invitees and our audience on Facebook page was enlightened, and I hope that you all took note of everything that Mr. Ventor, Mr. Newton, and Ms. Vala Patel, as well as Mrs. Jordan-John, would have presented. We would like to thank our guest speakers for joining us and for lending us their expertise in the areas, and by extension, your organizations as well, for lending us your expertise. We would also like to thank the invitees from the various government agencies, ministries, and departments, the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Retired Persons, mastermind leaders, and the listening and viewing public for joining us in this informative and engaging webinar. Lastly, we would like to thank the communications team and the members of staff at the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the Consumer Affairs Division for hosting this webinar. We invite you to visit our media pages, tradeind.gov.tt, Consumer Affairs Division TT on Facebook, or you can email us consumeraffairs@gov.tt, or you can contact us at our toll-free number 800-4277 for information, for inquiries, or just to lodge your complaint. Okay, so I'm still seeing questions coming up, but we have no more time. We would try to address you apart from this webinar, but we thank you so much for joining us and for engaging us, and we wish you a very pleasant day. I am Mrs. Eva Ballard Noel.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to our panelists for gracing us with our presence and providing all this information to us. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your day and happy World Consumer Rights Day.
Very much for having us, and happy World Consumer Rights Day to you as well.